Our 25% off Black Friday sale is live right now. All of our boot accessories, camera gear, wallets, belts are all 25% off, and they make the absolute best gifts, so check them out below. Can you get a high quality heritage boot made in India? And why are some of these brands moving their production to India instead of China or Mexico or some of these other countries that they've been doing this style of boot for decades? And we did an unboxing of these boots and it blew up, at least for the Rose Anvil 2 channel. It has like 50,000 views, a lot of interest and dialogue back and forth. Are Indian boots as good as China? Is India the sleeping giant of manufacturing that's just starting to wake up? Is this a sign that things are headed downhill? Is it headed uphill? What does it all mean? That's what we're gonna try to figure out by cutting these in half, run through all of our tests, looking at every single nook and cranny and material used to really figure out, can you actually get a high quality boot from India compared against some of the top heritage boots in the world, whether it's from Georgia, whether it's from Danner, Wolverine, Thursday, and even Red Wing. Not necessarily to see is it better, is it worse, but this is the common price point, anywhere from $200 to about $350, and these sit right in the middle. So it's the perfect way to really figure out where these lie in the spectrum of quality and value and material choices, and see if we can figure out why these brands are moving their production to India. And thanks to Milwaukee for sending these boots in and sponsoring this video, just for their stuff to be completely torn apart, scrutinized for every possible angle, every material, regardless of the outcome. So first, one of the big things people are talking about is like, oh, they're made in India, these Indian-made companies, or they're just using the Milwaukee name to sell products so it looks like it's American. Well, who's behind Milwaukee? Who are they? What do they do? Well, their parent company and their structure is owned by WDM Footwear Group, a fourth generation owned, family-owned manufacturing company. And a lot like Red Wing, WDM it owns its own tannery, it owns its own factories, and so it allows them to have that full vertical integration like we've seen with the Red Wing, where their boots are really, really high quality for the price because they're not paying a little bit all the way up the supply chain. And they also do private label business producing for Duluth Trading, Allen Edmonds, Johnson & Murphy's, Schoolhouse, Carhartt, and a lot of other US brands. So just off of that, it should be a really good boot for the price. But what is the actual story of the Milwaukee brand itself? Well, they say in their brand story, it was originally began as an accident. Customers visiting the WDM office mistook it for the retail store and encouraged them to sell their own products. They say it evolved into a love letter to Milwaukee, a locally focused, community-rooted brand celebrating craftsmanship, heritage, and the city's working-class culture. But are they based out of Milwaukee? That's what I want to know. Let's see what it says on their site. Okay, so here's their address, 301 West Milwaukee Avenue, Milwaukee. Sometimes you see these brands where they try to really lean into that American branding and marketing, and there's no actual Americana behind it. So at least Milwaukee has that storefront. But who owns Milwaukee? Besides the group, who's like the CEO of Milwaukee? Okay, Zaid Malik is the CEO of Milwaukee Boots. He's also CEO of Moral Code footwear brand. It says the CEO is working in the Milwaukee store. Okay, so it's looking like Zaid and all the CEOs are working in the US, at least from what I can tell. So it looks like it is a US-based company that's manufacturing in India. Another part of the Indian manufacturing is people similar to China are like, well, what's the working conditions? How do you trust that these are ethically sourced and ethically made? So what about Milwaukee? Well, they say they're a certified ethical production and employee practices that include 50% female workforce in manufacturing, on-site childcare and safe transportation for workers, 6 months maternity leave, strong healthcare, and modern facilities. So it's looking like they at least have everything set up to be a strong ethical company. And their products are all handcrafted and backed by our lifetime quality guarantee. So what does that lifetime guarantee actually look like? Our guarantee covers any manufacturing defects that compromises the function or integrity of our product. We take quality seriously, which is why we are vertically integrated. If any product produced by Milwaukee Boots is defective or cannot function due to issue with manufacturing, we will repair it or replace it. They're not saying it's a lifetime warranty that once these boots wear out, you get a new one, which is a little bit, misleading. I think some people would assume that's what they mean, but it's more of a manufacturing warranty. Okay, so that's like the general brand information, because I think it's important. I think this is the first time we've really covered an Indian-made boot. So then what are these boots? Well, the brand is Milwaukee. The style is the Pfister Cap Toe men's boot. They weigh 1 pound, 10 ounces. Retail for $265, and that's kind of what I was talking about, these price range, because comparing it to some of these other brands, you've got the Red Wings at $350. It's kind of the quality to beat, but it's also more expensive. You got your Wolverines are like $450, and they're not great. Your Thursdays come in around $200 to $250. Danners around that $265 mark. And then Georges are like, I think are a little under 200 or around 200. So it's right in the middle at 265. And obviously they're made in India, and the positioning of this boot is the Pfister's always stood for timeless style and lasting durability. Now we've elevated our best-selling style with more refined rubber outsole to offer a more sophisticated look without sacrificing the traction. Handcrafted with premium oiled pull-up leather, the Pfister develops a rich patina over time, making each pair uniquely yours. The other boot we have, the brand is Milwaukee. The style is the Bradford Mock Toe men's boot. They weigh 1 pound, 1.5 ounces, so a little bit lighter than the Pfister. Hardly know her. They retail for the same price at $265. They're also made in India, and the positioning is handcrafted, lined, and padded with leather. The Bradford's EVA sole is welted to a premium leather upper for that traditional celebrated mock toe silhouette. Add a little color with our signature amber laces, or keep it simple with matching leather laces. With a flexible sole that is both shock absorbing and lightweight, the Bradford is the kind of boot that won't hold you back. So now, let's get to it. What about the leather? Are the leathers good? Well, from the outside, they look really high quality. You can see this does have a nice amount of pull-up. It doesn't have a crazy amount of loose grain like you'd expect from other leathers like this. You can still see there's some here, but it's not any more than you'd see from a Chrome XL. This leather's on a little bit on the thinner side. It's 1.2 to 1.4 millimeters thick. It's around what you'd expect from a dressier boot because they're usually lined. The Bradfords, they do have a little bit thicker leather. It's more 1.5 to 1.8 millimeters thick. It's a lot softer, a lot more supple. It looks a lot like that Oral Legacy leather. I think it's emulating that bright orange pop. And I actually really like this leather. It really is a glovey leather. So the effect is it's gonna be a lot easier to break in. It's a little bit thicker, so you can still maintain that flexibility while still keeping it really strong. And so are these leathers on par for other boots at the similar price point? I think they are, because like I was saying with Chrome XL, even in these $450 Wolverines, you still get that loose grain because of just how Chrome XL is. Is this leather up to the Chrome XL standard? I don't think so. I think Chrome XL is still better, but it's still within acceptability especially for 265 bucks. You compare it to the more affordable stuff like Thursday, I think it's right on par with Thursday. I think it's better than what you would see from a more affordable, like sub $200 heritage boots like you see in Georgia's. So leather looks good. It's not the highest quality leather in the world, but I really, really like this leather a lot. I like how bright it is. I like the flexibility. This leather's nice. So we looked at the macro shots to see if there's grain, plenty of grain left in there. We burned them to see if there's plastic on top, no plastic anywhere. We did the puncture test with weird results. So the Pfister punctured through at 73 pounds, but keep in mind it's a really oil leather, it's a little bit thinner. The Bradfords punctured through at 202 pounds. And we've seen this trend of more flexible leathers and more malleable leathers almost like flex into the puncture test first and then pop through. And so I think it's a little bit skewed just how the test is ran. But what about that inside? Because these are a little bit more on the dressier side of things. These are far from a work boot. You see how almondy the toe is. It's a little bit more narrow. It's not a huge chunky mock toe stitch. This is clearly not a work boot. It's got the day-night copycat outsole. And so through the lens of a little bit more of a refined boot, how was this lining? I think it's a good lining. It's not the most heavily coated, heavy pigmented leathers you see in a lot more affordable boots. Even the Thursdays. Thursdays are good lining, but they do have that heavy pigment on top. And so I think it's about the same amount of pigment. So if you like the Thursday lining, that's what seems to be on par with it. You compare it to the more affordable boots, and you see a lot of these boots have fake heel counters, they've got fabric linings, or they're unlined. I prefer an unlined. But like I said, it's a more dress boot, so it makes sense. And they both have that exact same lining. If you look deeper inside, you can see it does have a dedicated counter cover on the inside, which is really cool to see because that's one of the weakest points in footwear because your heel's always rubbing on it and it wears through. But we don't know for sure if it is actually real leather. So we burned the linings on both of these. It's definitely real leather, but the internal counter covers melted and kind of got all stringy. So they're fake leather heel counters. How's that compared to the other ones in the industry for the price points? Georgia has a fake counter cover. Thursdays is real leather. Danner's is fabric. Red Wing is leather. And Wolverine, surprisingly leather. So if there's one point so far that they're a little bit behind on slightly, it might be that fake leather counter cover. And I don't know why they wouldn't just make a real leather counter cover there. It can't be that much more expensive. They could use the lining leather and flip it so you get that grippiness of that suede side. So that's one piece I wish they would improve. But what about the insoles? Some of these heritage boots, especially if you look at like your classic Red Wing, they don't even have a removable insole. Got a little patch in the heel, a little sock liner, but you're standing on that high quality veg tan leather because it's so durable, it breaks in the shape of your foot. But the more affordable ones, a lot of times they can't do that leather insole. So they'll put more of a sneaker style insole in, like this. It's not the most removable because I just tore this thing apart on accident. So that's another thing. I wish this insole was fully removable because if you want to put your orthotics in, or you need some more support, or you need to take a little bit room up, you can't take these out without pulling it apart because they glue them in. And then on the inside, you've got that foam that you have to peel up and really try to get removed like that. So it's not the worst thing, but it does make it a lot harder to put an insole in there. But what about these? Is this one as hard to remove? Is this one glued down? This one's not glued down. I would much prefer to do it this way, where it's a removable, and this insole's a lot higher quality, a lot squishier, a lot softer. This is just an open cell foam that feels really cheap. So good and bad. And then you compare that to these other boots, you know, your more affordable boots, you usually see that insole, like the Georgia boots. And like I said, the more expensive ones, you usually just see that leather. So what is underneath the insole? That's one of the biggest points in these heritage boots that really that differentiates the more affordable heritage boots that don't have that veg tan insole to the more expensive boots that do. And there's pros and cons associated with it. You know, that veg tan is really durable. It lasts a long time. It's like 5 or 6 millimeters thick. It's really supportive, but it's also really rigid. It's really hard underneath your foot because it's a hard piece of leather. And it's just not everyone's cup of tea for comfort. So what's underneath the insoles in these? That is fiberboard. So 265 bucks, you usually see fiberboard in there. You know, like you look at these other brands once again. Danner's a little bit more expensive, full fiberboard insole. You look at the Thursdays, fiberboard as well. And then the embarrassing one is Wolverine, where they use fiberboard in like a $450 boot. So it's fine, it's acceptable. It's not the highest quality way of doing it, but it also is gonna be more comfortable. It's gonna be more flexible, and some people prefer this style of boot. What about the midsoles and outsoles? Well, like I said, this is a day-night copy style outsole where they have these little nubs that allow you to have a nice flat profile while still having some traction. And this seems like it's a pretty good outsole. It comes in a really hard 90 Shore A, whereas the Bradfords are completely different. So this one's all about comfort. It's significantly softer down to like the 50 Shore A. So it's gonna give you a lot more squish underneath your foot, but it doesn't have that same classy look, and it's not gonna be as durable. And this is really what, you see this a lot more in workwear because it has that extra comfort, and obviously this is a lot dressier looking. So they are more affordable outsoles from non-name brand outsole manufacturers. And that's probably part of their vertical integration. They probably also manufacture their own outsoles. I would not be surprised if they did. Well, Red Wing's vertically integrated, and they do some of their own manufacturing of their soles, and they also have some Vibrams. Danner uses a Merrimack outsole. Thursday, very similar, makes their own outsoles. Wolverine uses Vibram, and Georgia actually uses his Vibram. So there's another point that they could potentially upgrade this boot and make it a little bit better, but it's also gonna upgrade the price or make it more expensive. So what about the construction? Because this is one of the things that brands are really good at faking to make it look like, oh, it's a 360 Goodyear welt construction, it's a quality, it's this, and you open them up and it's like, oh, these are just glued. These aren't even like Goodyear welted. So what can we actually see from the outside? It is a leather welt, which is on par with the rest of these brands. I think all of them still have leather welts to some degree. If I pull the upper away, just try to look down in there, see if I see stitches going in. I think I see stitches, so I'm pretty sure it's an actual real Goodyear welt construction. But as for the midsoles, I'm not sure that midsole is leather, and I don't think this heel stack is leather. Whereas the Bradfords, instead of a leather midsole or a rubber midsole, it looks like it's more foam midsole. So once again, comparing it to some of these other boots, Wolverine also doesn't use a full leather heel stack, but they do use a leather midsole. Thursday does a leather heel stack, and they also have that leather midsole, and that's why Thursdays are so hard to beat. They're the boot to beat in that sub $250 price range for similar reasons to the Milwaukee's. Thursday's done a really good job of starting to build that vertical integration. So this is a tough boot to beat regardless. And then you look at even more affordable boots like the Georgias, and you can see fake leather heel stack, there's no leather in the sole construction. And so we're starting to find that spot. You know, it's a little bit better than the Georgias, not as good as the Red Wings, but we don't know exactly where it lies. Is it worth the price? Is it as good as the manufacturing? What has Milwaukee hidden on the inside of the boots? That's what we're gonna figure out, so let's cut them in half. All right, we got them cut in half. It's time to figure out, are they as good? Is there anything hidden on the inside? So, let's see what's inside. And the Bradfords. So, what is hidden on the inside? Surprisingly good stuff. I did not expect it to have a cork filling. I thought for sure it was gonna be foam, you know, because it's a newer brand. They're still $265, but it does have a cork filling. Once again, how's that compare? The Georgias don't have a cork filling, but the Thursdays and the Wolverines and the Red Wings do. So it seems to be on par with the rest of the brands in that price point. The internal components, you know, the heel counters or Celastic heel counter, it does have a steel shank. Now you can see that pink fiberboard running through both of these. This one actually looks like it has a shank too. What is that? I didn't notice that till just now. I think it's a wooden shank. Let's find, should we break it? Let's find out if it's wood. Yep, that's wood. So, wooden shank. Pretty rare to see a wooden shank. And for the reason that I just showed you, is that if you do it just a little too much, you'll break that shank. It's gonna be tough to do that with your foot in the boot, but you get the point. And now we can see it is actually a fake leather heel stack. You can see that foam midsole. It does have a steel shank, and it is a Goodyear welt construction. That welt is real leather. So now, at $265, let's maybe start with what are all the things that could upgrade? If you're not even thinking about price, like what are all the things that could be upgraded to make this a perfect boot? Well, you could use a little bit nicer leather, but this is still a high quality leather. The lining's really good. I'd like that to be leather. I wish this was removable. I think that was a bad move by gluing that in. It's still easily fixable if you did need to remove it because it's not glued in that much, but I don't like when they glue insoles in. Other things that could be upgraded, obviously that leather insole instead of the fiberboard, fiberglass shank maybe instead of a wood shank. You could do a leather midsole like the Thursdays, a leather heel stack like the Thursdays. And if you really wanted to upgrade it to the max that even Red Wing doesn't have, you could do a veg tan heel counter, a veg tan toe counter. But that's why those boots that have all those components are like $500 or $600, regardless of where you buy them from. So then how does this specific setup compare to these other ones? Well, are they better than the Georgias? They are, but they're also, you know, $65 more than the Georgias. Are they better than the Danners at a similar price point? I think they're similar quality. A really interesting one, Wolverine. They're actually very similar because Wolverine is an embarrassment in their heritage boots because they both have that fake heel stack. The Wolverine does have a veg tan midsole. It also has the cork filling, but they're very similar in like the fiberboard, the way they're structured. And so I still think the Wolverines are better if you're not thinking about price, but per dollar spent, the Milwaukees are definitely better. But also keep in mind, Wolverines are way overpriced in my opinion, because if you compare it to, for under $100 less than the Wolverines, the Red Wings, this is like the high water mark, the quality to beat in the industry because Red Wing is also very vertically integrated. And so which one's better? I think the Red Wing is by far, you know, but once again, it's also anywhere from $50 to $100 more. And there's certain components that I think Red Wing has found their own way to save money and save their manufacturing time because they don't even have a dedicated midsole. They don't have a heel stack. They make it really simplified construction, and that's part of why I like the Red Wings. And then you compare it to the other gatekeeper of the industry, the other one that's just a monster in terms of quality, Thursday. Thursdays are, you know, anywhere from $30 to $50 less than the Milwaukees, but very similar construction. You've got the fiberboard lasting board, you've got the cork filling, you've got a similar lining, similar leather qualities. And so they're very similar in quality. Which one's better regardless of price? I still think the Thursday takes a lead because you got that leather heel stack, that leather midsole, and the brand's been around a lot longer, they're a lot bigger brand, but also Thursday is just incredibly priced. With all those comparisons, everything lined up at $265, are they worth the price? I think they're well worth the price. You know, I don't think it's a screaming deal where you've got a veg tan insole and this, and this, but comparing against the top brands in this price point, they fit perfectly in. You know, there's plenty of room for improvement, things I wish they'd improve, things I think they could improve without really increasing the price that much. But at the same time, that's part of what they're trying to do here. They're not trying to make a Red Wing at $100 more. They're trying to find that sweet spot, maybe between Red Wing and Thursday. And what about just the general quality? Is this Indian-made boot as good as an American-made boot, a Mexican-made boot, a Chinese-made boot? Obviously, each country is going to have different qualities, and we're just doing a general quality check. And to me, you look at these, and they're right on par with each other. If you handed me all these boots and you'd be like, which one's from China, which one's from India, which one's from the U.S.? Oh, well, these are from the U.S. for sure. I can tell that. But these other countries, it'd be hard to tell. You know, like what do you see that I don't see to be able to differentiate these? From my perspective on this brand, it looks like they're just as good a quality, if not a little bit better than some of the Chinese-made boots. And so then why are people moving their production to India? Well, there's a lot of stuff going on. Like even right now in 2025, there's been a lot of tariffs with China. And so like a lot of these brands that have predominantly manufactured in China, all of a sudden they have to get with 100% tariff and there's no more room in the margins to make money. And so a lot of these brands are like, okay, well, if we're gonna keep in a trade war with China, let's go to a country that maybe we have a little bit better relationship in India. And so I think that's a big part of it, but I also think there's a huge misunderstanding of Indian manufacturing prowess because a lot of people don't know that in India, they've been making traditional footwear for a long time. Because if you look at the East Indian Trading Company, you look at the European influence in India and the manufacturing they did there for a long time before they really started moving production to China, India has a shockingly long history of high quality welted footwear and nobody knows about it. And that was almost what I did with this video, but I wanted to do like a fact check. Let's do everything, diagnose, let's dissect every aspect of this, just materials first. But there's a huge long story of the history of heritage footwear in India that nobody's really ever talked about. Then final question, can you trust boots made in India? To me, this pretty well proves across the board that you can. You know, they're right on par. It's not the most screaming deal of all time. They're not overpriced, but they're right where they should be. They're priced where they should be. You can see on this spectrum of boots, they belong right at that $265 price point, and I think they're fairly priced. So let me know what you guys think and what your opinions are of these. What did I miss? You know, because it's a sponsored video, so we go through every little thing, and I think we covered everything. But if I missed something, let me know. And would you rather buy a made in India boot or a made in China boot? And if you disagree with any of my assessment, prove me wrong. Let me know what specifically I got wrong or what thing I gave too much value to or not enough value to. So thank you guys for all your support. See ya. So.